What would the dragons have to gain from conquering us? Tolar continued. Even if they had the power, why would they want such short-sighted subjects? To keep things like the morning from happening again. Tolar nodded, and Zara could see his satisfaction in the minute shift of his mouth and the faintest change to his scent. A good answer, but perhaps they wish to help us find the path for ourselves, instead of forcing us on it. Where are the gods? What? The gods, the sovereign host. People revere them, believe that they guide and protect, but you never see them. If the gods exist, why wouldn't they conquer the world to enforce proper behavior? That's why I've never believed in gods, Zare said. Tolar smiled. Ah, yes, the eternal pragmatist. Today, we're opening a book in the Library of Korranburg, an introductory volume on the 9, 6, and 1, a pantheon of gods known as the Sovereign Host and the Dark Six. It can be hard to approach the gods of Eberron. They are very different from the gods in other D&D worlds. Eberron's gods are distant, and there is no proof of their existence, but at the same time are ubiquitous and similar to pantheons on Earth in early history. Still, many players who want to involve themselves with religious orders tend to be drawn to the more straightforward faith, like the Church of the Silver Flame. This video is intended to give you a good introduction to how this family of gods works as a group, and allows you to roleplay people who live in the world that is culturally associated to these deities. I will cover each member of the Pantheon briefly, but each god needs coverage in their own videos, so make sure you get subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on those volumes of the Korranburg Library when I'm able to get to them. The Host and Six are most widely worshipped across Korver, but the form of the modern religion is rooted in Sarwona, at least the version of the religion most widely practiced. There are also seemingly unconnected variations from across the world that have deep similarities to the mainstream beliefs, including similar names and portfolios of their gods, giving credence to the universalist underpinnings of the religion. The religion's biggest strength for spreading and growth is its adaptability and inclusiveness. It pulls in disparate beliefs and peoples and integrates them into the wider beliefs of the faith. But let's start by looking at the mainline-based beliefs that make up the faith of the Sovereign Host and the Dark Six. First of all, this is a full pantheon of gods, much more like real-life pantheons than most of the pantheons within standard D&D. These are gods who are seen as related to each other as parents, children, and romantic partners, and such. Much like Frigg, Thor, and Odin, or Hera, Zeus, and Ares. Unlike real-life pantheons, they are much more clearly delineated between good and evil. But they still have stories about them working together, but also internal strife. In fact, the strife delineates the Dark Six from the main Sovereign Host. These six took sides against their host cohorts in an internal conflict among the gods, and the six were subsequently banished from the host. Structurally, the two pantheons are actually fundamentally dividing the gods into the gods of the civilized world in the host, and the gods of the natural world in the Six. Together, they make up a deified representation of the whole world, both the wild and the tame. Vassals, as the followers of the host and or Sects call themselves, follow religious tenets most often known as the Puritan Creed by vassals of the host. This creed was passed down through human migrants from the defunct Pyrene nation in Sarlona, where the beliefs were codified before the sundering and takeover by the inspired. Most non-scholarly Korvarans have no knowledge of its origin. Much like in the real world, many Christian sects make use of the Nicene Creed without most of the laity knowing its origin. Two of the principal doctrines of the Church are, as in the world, so are the gods. As are the gods, so is the world. The doctrine of universal sovereignty. Vassals believe that the host are within everything in the world. Any feat of strength, from the Khazak player, to the warrior on the battlefield, to a laborer moving a load of stone, has an element of Doldorn within them, for example. This means a prayer, or other devotion to a god, is not to bring the god into the act, but to bring their favor to an act that they are already involved within. The other doctrine is, the sovereign host is one name that speaks with one voice. The gods are the letters of that name and the sound of that voice. That is the doctrine of the divine host. It means that just because you worship the host as a whole doesn't mean that you're treating all the gods equally at all times. That is why you see temples and clerics dedicated to one god. And even though they focus on one god, they are still worshipping the whole host through them. You just focus on the god most relevant to your situation, and that is okay. A prayer to Dol Ra is still basically a prayer to the entire host. As a whole pantheon together, the sovereign host, with the Dark Six, is often called the 9, 6, and 1, or sometimes the 9 and 6 in 1. The exact meaning of these collective names are debated within the world of Eberron. The 9 and the 6 are obviously the gods of the host and the Dark Six, but what is the 1? Well, some believe it's the world itself. Others believe the 1 refers to the pantheon as a whole. This type of debate is not uncommon among vassals, though. Another you might see is about the celestial crown, also known as the octagram, which is the symbol of the 9 gods of the host. Of course, it is an octogram, meaning it has 8 points. The symbol goes back to pre-Korvar human settlement, so its origin is unclear. Some adherents believe the symbol was created before the birth of Kol Korran, so represents the 8 gods of the host to that point. Others believe, since it is bifurcated in color, it actually represents all 15 gods of the 9, 6, and 1. Or even believe that this symbol represents the different levels of the soul. Less debated is the hexagram, the symbol that encompasses all members of the Dark Six, also called the Dark Star, which is much more self-evident, as it does have 6 points, 1 for each deity. Though this is a symbol for the whole pantheon, it is not uncommon for symbols of individual members of the pantheon to represent all of the 6 as well. To this point, I have mentioned the names of some of the gods of the pantheon, but haven't explained them in full yet. So let's cover the gods of the pantheons in alphabetical order. Eroi, the sovereign of life and love. Her symbol is most often depicted as a sheath of wheat tied into a bundle. She is in charge of good weather and fertility, so prayers and sacrifices are given to her to ensure bountiful harvests and safety through childbirth. Orion, the sovereign of law and lore. His symbol is most often depicted as an open book. He is the patron of lawmakers, scholars, and arcanists. So prayers and sacrifices are given to him to help in school, to help with law trials, pass laws, and when attempting arcane research. Balinor, the sovereign of Horn and Hunt. His symbol is usually a pair of antlers from a stag. He guides those who make their living on the edges of civilization, those who bring back the bounty of the natural world back to the town through hunting, trapping, foraging, and the like. Likewise, the patron of those who care for domesticated animals, bringing the wild directly into the humanoid world. Boldrai, the sovereign of Hall and Hearth. Her symbol is usually a lit fire inside a hearth, warming the home. Her rites and prayers are all about communities, large and small, so homes, families, villages, and nations. She is bringing them together and protecting them in her warm glow. Dolara, the sovereign of sun and sacrifice. Her symbol is generally shown as a rising sun with rays radiating outward. She is the god of light and noble warriors, and inspires those who fight for others with blade or diplomacy, and those who bring light to the darkness. Duldorn, the sovereign of strength and steel. His symbol usually comes in the form of a long sword crossed over a red shield. He blesses anyone who relies on the strength of their body to accomplish their goals, be they workers or warriors. A prayer to him may come in a battle, an athletic competition, or even if you're helping your friend move house. Kolkaran, the sovereign of world and wealth. His symbol is a 9-sided coin with the octagram of the host etched on its side. He is beloved by travelers, merchants, and traders, as well as by thieves and hustlers. Prayers go to Kolkaran to get out of poverty, ensure fruitful business, and growth in trade. He represents how commerce and trade can allow the growth of the entire community, and how to do it without hoarding wealth. Oladra, the sovereign of feast and good fortune. Her symbol is a domino showing 9 total pips. She makes manifest the good feelings that bind together a community, as well as being a patron to gamblers, rogues, and merchants in risky ventures. Rites to Oladra are taken by those who undertake any great risk that has the potential of great upside. Onatar, the sovereign of fire and forge. His symbol is the hammer and tongs used in a forge. While tied to aspects of fire and metalworking, he is also involved with any craft of skill, from basket weaving to painting, and any other artistic pursuits. Many arcanists and mystics involved with crafting powerful magical objects also revere him. The Devourer, the sovereign of wave and realm. His symbol is 5 sharpened bones lashed together, with a 6th slash sometimes behind, usually from another material. This god symbol is one of the most often used to depict the Dark Six as a group as well. He is the raw and unpredictable destructive power of nature. He controls storms, so even devout vassals of the host will sacrifice or say a prayer ahead of a sea voyage to avoid his wrath, and may also look to him to help end a drought. The Fury, the sovereign of rage and ruin. Her symbol is a winged draconic figure with a tail of a snake. Her power is in passion, both in aspects of love or lust, as well as wrath and anger. Someone looking to complete revenge will look to the Fury for assistance or thanks, as will someone madly in love. The Keeper, the sovereign of death and decay. His symbol is a dagger shaped from a Kyber dragon shard. He is the god of gluttony, greed, and hoarding wealth. It is believed he can capture a soul bound for Dollar when they die, preventing them from eventually reaching the host after fading away. Also, the patron for holding on to wealth, and necromancers outside of those built upon elven traditions of House Vol and the Cabal Rin. The Mockery, the sovereign of betrayal and bloodshed. His symbol is 5-bladed weapons or tools which lay in the form of the hexagram, spattered in blood. He is the patron of underhanded actions, especially in combat. Guerrilla fighters, assassins, and shady business people all look for guidance from this god of war. The Shadow, the sovereign of magic and mayhem. His symbol is a tower of obsidian. The flip side of knowledge is secrets, and he is the god of secrets, corruption, and other dangerous knowledge and magics. Those looking to protect dangerous knowledge, or discover it, will pay him homage. The Traveler, the sovereign of chaos and change. His symbol varies greatly, but often is 4 bones crossed into 8 points, with the bones inscribed with runes. He's a god of inspiration and revolution, cunning and deception, protector of travelers, and secret inspiration to artificers. He might cause the insight to create new marvels that bring about a new age of civilization, or disrupt the order and cause a city to explode in revolution. Okay, so now that I've introduced the gods, let's talk about how their churches and worship happens as a group. All over Korver, in public temples and shrines, and in secret in homes, caves, or many other hidden places, groups of people join together to offer prayers and perform rites together dedicated to the gods of the sovereign host and Dark Six. Among vassals of the host, public worship is common. These services are led by priests. In very small towns and villages, these priests are often untrained individuals from the community, but who are especially skilled and seen as blessed by one or more of the gods. So a master herbalist might be the local priest of Boldry, for example. They generally have very traditional lay understandings of the gods, but are still able to lead their community in basic rites. However, most priests of the host are trained professionals. People who have been called to the priesthood generally go to a seminary school for a few years, or apprentice with a local priest to learn the deeper teachings of the religion. Some decide to dedicate their entire lives and go to monasteries. In this time of learning, the students learn liturgical history and lore, as well as methods of giving advice and protecting their community. Protecting the community is one of the most important aspects of being a priest of the host. This is expected through acts of charity and guidance, as well as through more martial means if that situation arises. Now, you may have noticed that I have been using the word priest here and not cleric. That is intentional to not confuse the role of a priest with that of the character class of cleric. Most people, even those high-ranking within the priesthood, are not clerics in the sense that they follow the rules of that character class, nor do even most priests have the ability to cast divine spells. If a temple is lucky, they have 1 or 2 priests able to pray for a magical ritual or use a cantrip-level spell. People with the abilities of the classes of cleric, paladins, monks are seen as true champions and the heroes who can truly protect the community of believers in addition to leading worship. Now, the existence of seminaries and apprenticeships might make you think that there is a large centralized church hierarchy. However, that is not really true. The apparatus of the churches are run by fairly small regional liturgical councils, which can cover cities, provinces, and occasionally nations. But that's decided by the locals. There is no head of the church like a pope, and actual titles and ranks within the structure, and how those ranks are achieved, are decided again by the region's liturgical councils. Communities generally maintain at least one temple to the whole pantheon, with shrines or whole temples dedicated to individual gods. Large cities usually have multiple temples to each god. What about vassals of the Dark Six more specifically? Well, that depends on where you live. They maintain a bit more structured priesthood and even liturgical councils in Drome and Dargoon. But outside of those nations, where open worship of the Six is deeply frowned upon, worshippers must operate in secret to avoid the social stigma. Thus, there is not much in the way of organized structures to worship. Seminaries and other training facilities for vassals of the Dark Six are completely unknown. Priests develop through apprenticeships or by proclamation of talented individuals by their community. Unlike the host, shrines and priests of the whole pantheon of the Dark Six are quite rare. They are almost always dedicated to single members of that assemblage of gods. The priests of both sides of the pantheons lead regular group rites and rituals. There are regular weekly services for each god, and there are also regular rites for specific life events, birth, marriage, and other big junctures in a person's life as celebration and thanks to the gods, like school graduations or maybe a journeyman becoming a master. There are also periodic holy days spread across the year's calendar. More personal rites happen when someone wants to ensure the god's favor in upcoming events. These smaller rites can be done alone and outside of church services as well. The form of prayers to the 9, 6, and 1 vary. Prayers to both sides of the pantheon include thanks to the gods. Though to the host, it is generally thanks for assistance and guidance through a task, and prayers to the Dark Six are usually prayers of thanks for avoidance of disaster in an activity. So an artificer might thank Onatar for completing a difficult repair, while a sailor would thank the devourer for not destroying their ship in the storm that passed over them. Rites include chants, gestures, and movements, and, more importantly, sacrifices, often burnt. Sacrifices are usually minor, like sacrificing a small amount of wheat for Arroweye for a good harvest, or melting down some coins before a big deal for Kolkaran, or tearing out a page of a favorite book to the keeper to avoid someone from revealing a secret they learned from you. The sacrifices should be personal, but minor, and not particularly valuable, and related to the thing that you are looking for either favor in or to avoid disfavor. Sacrifices to the Dark Six can escalate if the ask is big, up to and including blood sacrifice. But overall, even animal sacrifice is fairly rare. Almost every vassal of the host occasionally prays and performs rites to gods of the Dark Six to avoid their disfavor. They do it in small ways, and would insist they aren't praying to the dark gods, just looking to avoid their bad luck. So more like superstitions than reverence. Unlike other D&D worlds where the gods can directly answer spells like Commune, Eberron's hosts are distant, and not even divine proxies are able to communicate with the gods directly. Because of that, it is not easy for churches to maintain orthodoxy. Not only that, it appears that belief in the host and Six comes into being spontaneously around the world. That means the exact traditions coming together and believed by vassals of the host vary greatly on a nation-to-nation and even person-to-person basis. Variation in naming is reasonably common. For example, Bali Nur is Balinor in the Talenta Plains, and Urulon is Orion's name among the Giants of Zendrik. Because of the Church's history of encountering variants and accepting and absorbing that variant into its pantheon as aspects of their own gods, gods like the Drow's Volkor are often conflated with the Mockery, even though he is just the most well-known of his own pantheon of animal spirits, the Volkori Dao Drows venerate, and has many differences that we won't be able to expand upon in this video. Then there are the deities that vassal scholars see as the mixture of aspects of two more deities from the host. Some examples are Baenor and Karak, which are mixtures of Balinor and Doldorn, and the Keeper and Orion, respectively. They are found within a giantish pantheon in Zendrik. Similarly, there are so-called lesser pantheons, where groups of gods are worshipped together and venerated for their supremacy over specific aspects of life. Since these groupings usually include members of the Dark Six, they are not generally worshipped openly in Korver, but are not uncommon within specific professions and groups. The most common of these are followers of the Restful Watch, who have adherents in most communities in Korver. They follow teachings of both Orion and the Keeper regarding handling of the dead and their spirits. They operate the majority of burial preparation undertakings in Korver. Also common are the Three Faces cults, who look to three of the gods grouped together. The Three Faces of War, Dolora, Doldorn, and the Mockery, are commonly worshipped as a group by warriors of all stripes, taking on all aspects of combat, both good and bad. Despite not being the only Three Faces sub-pantheon, they are the one most often known just as the Three Faces. The others are the Three Faces of Coin, Kolkaron, Onatar, and the Keeper, the Three Faces of Love, Boldrai, Arowai, and the Fury, and the Faces of the Wild, Arowai, Balinor, and the Devourer. There are multitudes of other variants of the belief system beyond these, of course. A couple I want to note are the Church of the Worm Ascendant, and a belief that is of goblinoid origin, in a 16th god. The Church of the Worm Ascendant is a set of beliefs built on top of the standard beliefs in the 9 and 6. Basically, they take the idea that the gods are embodied in the actions of mortals to its highest point, including dragons, where the worm part of the name is derived, and it is quite common to depict the 9 and 6 as dragons anyway, that someone can become so good at the talents within the spheres of influence of a deity, usually represented by wealth and power, that they ascend to godhood and take over that god's place in the pantheon. These beliefs have some similarities to the draconic religion of Thir, and are most common in Stormreach, in Zendrik. The 9, 6, and 1 is often the name used for the whole pantheon of the Sovereign Host and Dark Six together, with debate among many on what the meaning of the 1 is. For many goblinoids who follow a version of the religion that arose before the arrival of humans in Korver, but after the fall of the Dakani Empire, the 1 is an additional god, the Overthrown. Not much is known about this god from outside of the traditional 9 and 6. They were exiled from the pantheon like the Dark Six, however they seem to have been disconnected from the Dark Six as well. There are theories that humans destroyed depictions and artifacts regarding this deity, as the rest of the goblin pantheon aligned with the human beliefs, and this god stood out from the rest, making it hard to convert goblins to using the same religious framework, though there is not a lot of evidence that this did happen for certain. Scholars believe this exiled god might have been an overlord or a Dalkir whose cult wormed its way into the Galdar mainstream, and not an original deity. So, as we're approaching the end of this volume, I hope you have a better understanding of the pantheons of the Sovereign Host and Dark Six. This should help you create moderately religious characters who came up within the cultural context of Korver, as the faith of the host permeates nearly all aspects of life. This is still true even in Thrain and Karnath, which has significant other faiths influencing things as well. The vassal through culture will be familiar with the 15 gods of the Pantheon and basic prayers and rituals, and should occasionally give lip service in thanks to the host and might even do small rites to avoid the wrath of the Sects. Clerics, paladins, and monks will of course be familiar with the church structure and have a good chance of having trained in the seminary or lived in a monastery for a time. They'll be much more intimate with the details of each of the gods, including legends, and there are various other depictions that was outside of the scope of this video. Of course, any character might have their own variant beliefs that go in line with one of the quote-unquote heretical groups that still fall within the general scope of the sovereign host. As we close out this volume on the 961 and return to the Library of Korranburg, I do hope you found this information helpful in creating new player characters and NPCs. Here is where I usually mention that you should get subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos, and you should if you haven't done so already. But if you think a member of your gaming group might find one of our videos helpful in understanding their characters, please share it with them. That's the best way to help the channel grow. And don't forget that we do have social media presence on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, we do have a feature that shows off a Eberron miniature almost every week. And both sources include channel news and occasionally just general D&D news.